All right, welcome. In this explainer, we're going to talk about a framework that can totally transform how your team delivers software. We'll break down exactly how you can measure, understand, and most importantly, architect for elite performance, all within the Azure ecosystem. Okay, let's just dive right in by talking about a problem that I'm sure a lot of you have felt. It's that nagging sense that things could be better, but you can't quite put your finger on why. No, seriously, think about it. How do you actually know? Is it just a gut feeling? Do you measure success by the number of late-night emergency calls you don't get? Or do you have real, objective data to back up your decisions? So let's paint a picture of a team that might feel, well, a little too familiar. We'll call them Team Phoenix. Now, these folks are smart, they work hard, but they're basically operating in the dark. Their entire delivery process is based on anecdotes and just intuition. This kind of subjective approach isn't just inefficient, it's super stressful, it's unpredictable, and honestly, it's a perfect recipe for burnout. They're flying completely blind. So, how do we give Team Phoenix and your teams a clear path forward? Well, we need a map. We need a common industry standard language to measure performance and guide us. And that's exactly what DORA metrics are. Think of it like a GPS for your delivery pipeline. First up is deployment frequency. This one's pretty simple. How often are you actually shipping code to your users? Are you a team that deploys multiple times a day, getting that super fast feedback? Or are your releases these huge quarterly events that everyone just dreads? This is our first real measure of throughput. Okay, next, let's look at quality with the change failure rate. Of all the deployments you push out, what percentage of them ends up causing a problem in production? A high rate here, well, it probably points to some issues in your testing or release process. And remember, this isn't about pointing fingers, it's a critical health indicator for your system stability. Now, this next metric measures speed, but from a totally different angle. Once the developer commits a piece of code, how long does it just sit there? In code reviews and build queues, waiting for testing, before it's actually live and providing value to customers. That gap, that's your lead time for changes. And finally, because look, let's be real, failures are going to happen. We have time to restore service. When an incident does occur, how fast can your team diagnose the problem, deploy a fix, and get things back to normal? This is our second and just as important stability metric. Now, what's so cool about this when you see them all together is how it frames the entire philosophy. See, DORA isn't just about going faster. It forces you to balance speed with stability. You can see how the four metrics are split perfectly between throughput and stability. The truly elite teams, they are great at both. They never ever sacrifice one for the other. Okay, so now that we get the metrics, let's check back in with our friends Team Phoenix. Armed with this new framework, they started measuring. And, well, what they found wasn't pretty, but it was the absolute first step toward a massive transformation. So here's their starting point. The data confirmed exactly what they were feeling in their gut. Deployments were rare, they took forever to get through the pipeline, and when they finally did, they often broke something. The numbers were low, and the stress was definitely high. Now, this is where the architect becomes the real catalyst for change. The team's architect realized the problem wasn't the developers, it was the system they were stuck in. So they focused on two huge interventions. First, to enable smaller, more independent changes, they started to strategically break down their monolith into microservices. That directly helps deployment frequency. Second, to build safer deployments, they automated progressive rollouts, things like canary releases, using Azure DevOps pipelines. This was all designed to slash their change failure rate. And here is the payoff. I mean, just look at this transformation. By focusing on the underlying architecture, every single one of their DORA metrics improved dramatically. They were deploying more often, they were getting code out faster, and with way fewer failures. They literally went from chaos to clarity. So the story of Team Phoenix is pretty powerful, right? But what is your specific role as an architect in making this happen? How do you actually build that bridge for your teams? This right here, this is the key mindset shift you have to make. You're not just designing software systems, you are designing the very environment where your teams live and work. Your decisions create the constraints and the possibilities that ultimately determine their performance. And here they are, your three most powerful levers for change. First, enable decoupling. Think about things like event-driven architectures or really well-defined APIs. When teams can build, test, and deploy their services on their own, you directly crush that lead time for changes. Second, champion testability. This means designing systems where writing fast, reliable, automated tests is easy, not a chore. Better testing, that directly lowers your change failure rate. And third, drive observability. This is way more than just logging. It's about building systems that can tell you what's going on inside. Good observability is how you shrink your time to restore service from hours down to minutes. Great, so you've helped your team reach this amazing high-performance state. But the job isn't done. Nope. The real challenge is sustaining it, and that means you have to build a culture of continuous improvement that is fueled by data. You have to make this data visible and accessible to everybody, and you don't need some complex, expensive tool. A simple dashboard, maybe pulling data from source control like GitHub and your pipelines in Azure DevOps, gives the entire team a single shared source of truth. And here's the crucial part. You've got to make reviewing these metrics a regular habit. A short, and this is important, blameless conversation every 2 weeks is perfect. This isn't a performance review. It's a health check for your whole delivery system. The goal is never to judge, but to work together to spot trends, celebrate what's going well, and ask, hey, what's the next bottleneck we can remove to make everyone's life easier? And that really brings us to our final critical question for you to take away. Every single decision you make, every pattern you choose, every system you design, is it adding friction and creating a bottleneck? Or is it paving a smooth, clear path for your teams to deliver value quickly and safely? That right there is the essence of architecting for performance.